Hello all, this is Mr. Callen here to help you with some more reteaching of simple interest. If you're looking in your textbook, that'll be Chapter 2, Lesson 7 if you'd like to look at some extra examples. To show you what you might have already seen, our goal is to solve all sorts of problems with interest. For instance, how much interest? But it could also be how much principal. What would your percent be? How many years? That sort of thing. Now, it takes proportional reasoning as well as converting, let's just say, percents to fractions or decimals. You're going to need those skills when completing this assignment. For those of you that have an interactive math notebook, interactive math journal, check out page 61. You might choose to have those notes out as we go through this video. Now, what I'm going to do, ladies and gents, is I'm going to complete the entire left side together with you, which will leave you 4 problems on your own. And I want you to know that our goal, the 7th grade teachers here at the Concord Junior High School, our goal is that if we help you with one side, it should then help you complete the other independently. So let's go ahead and make this a little bigger for you. If you would like at any point, pause, rewind, go back, rewatch, fast forward if you want to do the problem on your own and just check your answer. And of course, pause if you'd like to read it on your own. John's depositing $250 in a savings account. 8% simple interest. We probably should have written the word rate there. For 5 years. Question is asking how much interest will John earn? So the first thing we recall when looking at our notes is to use the formula I equals PRT. Interest is equal to principal times rate times time. Now, what I like to do is I like to identify the question first. Here it says how much interest, so I'm going to circle that. See, that's the only thing that should be unknown, which means we should know the principal, we should know the rate, and we should know the time. For whatever reason, I tend to look at the time first. It just seems like the easiest thing. And then the deposit of $250, that is the principal, the initial amount of money you put in. Now, as soon as I get to this part, I kind of let the alarm bells go off in my head. Because when it has an 8% interest rate, notice that we don't have a proportion, but anytime we do set up 8%, what does that look like? It looks like 8 compared to 100. That's what percent means. So you should either write in 8 over 100, or, as many of us do, change it into a decimal, 800ths. Do not write in 8, little disappearing ink here. If you write in 8, your answer will be incredibly, ridiculously, humongously, way too big. So when we go ahead, we can now, to find the interest, simply multiply 250 by 800ths by 5. When you do that, you'll get an answer of $100 of interest. Now, at this point, you may either pause and complete number 1, looking back and forth, how are the problems similar, how are they different? Or you may continue on as we proceed to number 2. So I'll leave that as your choice. Pause or continue on with me. Let's read number 2. Paul's parents put $5,000 into a college fund, 6% simple interest rate, 15 years. How much money was in the account? So if I were to write I equals P times R times T. What's interesting here, it doesn't say how much interest. It doesn't say how much principal. It says how much money. I'm going to put a little question mark with my close reading skills, and then I'm going to put the word total, and we'll come back to that. Once again, we find that the interest is what is not known, but every other amount is known. We have $5,000. That's the initial principal amount. We have 15 years. And as we've said before, let those alarm bells go off. 6% literally means 600ths. You may write it as a fraction or as a decimal, but most of us write 600ths as a decimal. Now, I got to tell you, folks, when you work this out, you will find an interest rate, or excuse me, an interest of $4,500, which is great. But that's not what the question's asking, is it? The question doesn't simply ask how much interest. The question says, look, how much money is in the account, as in the total money. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the initial amount, the 5,000 they put in. They say, listen, I want my 5,000 back plus some extra to find a final amount. How much is in the bank account? That would be $9,500. Again, ladies and gents, at this point, you may either pause the video and go ahead and do the problem right next to it, or you can continue on with me to number 3. Here we are. You are paying $2,700 in interest on a car loan with a rate of 8.5% for 8 years. Question is asking, what was the original principal borrowed? I probably should have focused on that word borrowed as well. I equals P times R times T. Well, wait a second. This question is saying what was the principal, which means the P will be the only number that is unknown. The interest, it told us, not only do we have to pay them their money back, but we have to pay $2,720 extra. Time, I see 8 years. Okay, now this is interesting. 8.5%. Now listen, that means 8% and then another part of a percent. If I were to just write 8%, it would be 0 and 800ths. Then we have another part, a piece of a percent. If it helps you guys, you may always, instead of reducing by 10, enlarge by 10, and you can then see 85 thousandths. Perhaps that'll help you identify why that 85 is in the thousands place. 800ths, 85 thousandths. All right, now listen. Remember, please, that our goal is to get P by itself. But I'm kind of looking at this and saying, you know what? We can simplify that. 85 hundredths times 8, I believe, if I've done my calculations correctly, will be 68 hundredths times this missing P principal. If you wish, you can put the dot in there. But you know what? We don't want to know what 68 hundredths times P is. We want to know what P is. So let's use our inverse operations with our algebra skills, and let's divide both sides by 68 hundredths. In this case, 68 hundredths divided by 68 hundredths cancels out. And when we divide $2,720 divided by 68 hundredths, we will find a final principal amount to be $4,000. Again, you may pause, go do the problem number 3, or you may continue on with notes. Last one, ladies and gents. Wesley won $10,000 in a lottery after taxes. Invest the $10,000. Okay, so that's the initial investment. Savings account, $3,000 in simple interest in 2 years. Question is asking, what is the interest rate? Okay, so write it. Question's asking, what is the rate? That means every other bit of information should be known. I always latch on to the years. Principal was the initial amount, the $10,000. The extra money earned, $3,000. But remember, please, that our goal is to find what R is. So let's go ahead and just look at this right side of the equation. Is there any way we can simplify it? Well, sure. We can actually change around the order of R and 2. Multiply 10,000 times 2 and you'll get 20,000 times R. But we don't want to know what 20,000 R's are equal to. We want to know what a single R is. So let's go ahead and get rid of that 20,000. The inverse of multiplying by 20,000 is to divide by 20,000. 20,000 divided by 20,000 cancels out. Hey, look at what that leaves us with. The R equals 3,000 divided by 20,000 is a rather strange number. But let's recall that rates are usually advertised as percents. So how do we take this number and change it to a percent? Well, when you hear 1500ths, when you see 1500ths, that should mean that the interest rate is 15%. Now, once again, ladies and gents, as you look through this assignment, you'll notice how the problems are similar. You'll notice how the problems are different. But we believe, that if you can understand the problems on the left, they will help you complete the problems on the right. Take care, do well, bring some questions on Monday, and let's grow.